So can I ask you what happened in 1922? I know that they stopped turning up to the ceremony.
Well, you see, having achieved our sovereignty and having achieved Dáil Éireann and that, they weren't going to turn the Irish Republic. Look at it there on that. I mean, I didn't make it up, you know. It's all written down for you.
Yeah.
And the Irish Republican Brotherhood and Sinn Féin, basically, they wouldn't turn the Republicans wouldn't turn their back on the sovereign seal and be subject to the crown. Both houses of the Oireachtas is not properly constituted. The protocol for the Trinity is this. If in our day we put up the Trinity in Dáil Éireann, there wasn't a Senate, but the Crown of England insisted that there be a Senate to protect their interests in Ireland. And they wouldn't allow the sovereign seal to be elevated, it had to be put on the backs of the chairs in Senate Éireann. The protocol should be the sovereign seal, the tricolour in Dáil Éireann. That's mandatory. And the harp, our national emblem, in Senate Éireann. That both houses of the Oireachtas are properly constituted, you know, and they're not today.
And there's courtrooms all over the country that don't even have a sovereign seal in them behind.
And we went up to the Special Criminal Court. They had a harp up with 12 strings. We put up 12. It's the symbol of Brehon law. We put up the sovereign seal, you know, the Trinity, and the sovereign seal over the judge's head with 12 strings. The Christian seal, and it has to have Éire on it. That's what makes it legal valid. And they changed it in 22. To 13 strings, you know, 14 is on the money. If you could only get that website, they took down the website this summer, somebody took it off, MW Higgins.
They did not, did they?
They did.
Well, I have all the stuff, I have it all here actually, I have it all printed out, all your slides.
Oh, have you?
So I still have it, yeah.
But they took it away, they don't want to get into that website.
We'll make it again.
But I'm trying to get the boys, Vincent said that they might be able to, I'm trying to get a website, irb.ie, and we put that up there for, I only do it for the citizens, you know.
For the
and
people.
You know, exactly. Yeah. That's what it's
their sovereignty.
That's their sovereignty. And you have a sovereign right to education, own your house, you know, hospital care, you know, passport, go any place in the world as sovereign citizens.
Travel freely.
That's what it's about, and that's what they gave their lives, those misfortunes, you know. But,
so can we go back to 1922? Do you want to go and sit down for a coffee or
no.
tea?
I'm supposed to be on my way.
Well, can we talk about 1922?
Well, 22 was the disaster, you know.
Yeah.
Crown of England wouldn't allow Dáil Éireann, as you know.
Yeah.
They did everything to get rid of it.
They needed to corporatise the Irish government.
That's what they did in 22.
And they needed their own seals.
Yeah, and they're still there.
And they were minted in the Royal Mint in London.
Not only that, but all the monuments around here that had you see that crown on top of the sovereign seal means that they take precedence over our sovereignty. And the RUC uniform had it at the same thing, because I got that changed. Our sovereign seal is opposite the coat of arms. We're equal to the sovereignty of the Crown of England. And what is the Crown of England doing with our sovereign seal up in our coat of arms? It's owned by the Irish Republican Brotherhood. And do we have sovereignty in the United Kingdom? That's the question that has to be asked. You know, what are you doing with that? They have it since 1155. And that's what caused all the conflict, you know. And Pope Adrian IV, the only English Pope, he's the one that gave it to Henry II to build their empire. You see, everyone believed that you couldn't have an empire without the harp.
And there's a massive painting in Dublin Castle of the Irish chieftains submitting to Henry II. It's a grand painting, and I'm sure it's celebrated. They all salute themselves around it.
But that's what she did, you see. She would destroy your title and give you one of her own, but you have to be subject to her. The people in the United Kingdom are not sovereign citizens, they're subjects to the crown. And we are sovereign citizens. That you have a sovereign right to own your house, your land. We don't acknowledge the Crown of England or anybody else. You know, and that's why I'm always on. We shouldn't on the old money, the punts, you had the sovereign seal in the front and the harp in the back. And that was our sovereignty, you know, and that's what they did. But it is a fabulous history. With 22, we only had a claim on Northern Ireland according to the Crown of England. In actual fact, you see, indefeasible mean we don't accept that, and they didn't accept it. They wouldn't go into Leinster House, and they wouldn't take their seats. And so now, since Bertie Ahern has removed Article 2 and 3 of the Constitution, it means we're back to the sovereignty of the 32 counties again. But the tragedy is that Mary McAleese is president of the 26 counties, and she can't claim sovereignty. And my mandate is the 32 county election of 1918 from Vaughan's Hotel. That's the mandate that I have. And that's what I'm hoping, that, you know, I'm getting very old, and when I pass on, that somebody's going to be able to continue doing it, because it's very all that I claim all the territory, the rivers, lakes, seas, fishing, right down as far as Spain, France, right up the English Channel, up the Irish Sea, right across to America. That's a huge territory, and you know, that's very valuable. And the license,
fishermen in Ireland would love to know that.
But the license, they're talking about selling the assets. The sovereign government, it's only a sovereign government can issue license, collect taxes, make appointments, and appoint a judiciary under the sovereign seal of Dáil Éireann. You have to be a sovereign government. We're not a sovereign government, and you know, those judges are not properly appointed, and those civil servants are not. If they're not properly, they're not entitled to salaries or pensions or anything else, and until you are. And you know, that's very important. Where are they getting their authority from? Is it from 1922 from the Crown of England, or is it from the Dáil Éireann? Dáil Éireann is our sovereignty.
Where do people like the sheriff get their authority from?
They don't, only chancellor their arm, like the bankers. They weren't bankers. They were just chancellors, you know. And we don't want chancellors running our country, you know. But that's the point. If you had our sovereignty properly done in that, I think we would have one of the greatest countries in the world.
You would.
And people would know. I mean, you'd happily pay whatever tax, but given all your tax, bailing out banks, it's the sovereign citizens they're supposed to bail out, not the banks or anything. You are the sovereign citizens. That's what it's all about.
You made the banks more important than the sovereign citizens.
Of course they did. They didn't even consider it. Straight away, bail out your pals. Not even. I mean, you look at your checkbook. It has to have the sovereign seal. I mean, that's a desecration of that sovereign seal. And you know, it's really a scandal. But I'm glad that young people like yourself are getting more interest and asking the questions.
Well, I'm dying to know more. Of 100 million questions.
I better go up and talk to Vince. Are you going to be? I'll tell you what we do. We'll hopefully. Oh yeah.
Hopefully we'll go for a cup of tea or something.
No, we won't. No. John has said to go, and he says, "Can we go? You can go." And he's gone half an hour.
But okay, who shot Michael Collins?
Well, that's all in the Vaughan Hotel papers.
Is it?
But yeah, it is. But the important of it, why was he shot?
Yes.
He betrayed the Sovereign Republic of Éire, and he was executed under the 1916 proclamation by his own.
Really?
That's what happened. Only the proclamation. I can't indict a person under the Constitution. It's not good enough. It's the 1937 Constitution. Harry read the Sovereign Constitution, but they've sort of airbrushed that out. It's only the proclamation that you could be indicted. You saw the words rapine, cowardice, and humanity. Yeah. Did they do that? Did they betray the Sovereign Republic of Éire? If you did, that's your punishment. It's 13 strings, changed in 1922 to 13 strings.
Emmett Dalton. How's it going? Emmett Dalton pulled the trigger, did he?
Well, there's all sorts of things. He did and he didn't. But the point is, why was Collins? He was executed by his own people for betraying the Sovereign Republic of Éire. And that's why, it was under the proclamation. If somebody's indicted in the country, a judge, a civil servant of Dáil Éireann, or a TD or senator, it's under the 1916 proclamation.
That's why they should sit under 13 strings, and they don't, of course.
Well, they do in the courts. It's all under 13 strings, although the new ones, they had only 12 of them, and they had a heart of it. It had no air on it. It has to have air on it to make it. The same, it's the GA medal, which is 100 years old. That's ours. That's where it comes from. It has a sacred circle with common Luther scale in the centre of the Celtic cross and the words Éire. And in the centre of the Fenian Brotherhood, that's what we're wearing, the shamrock, the green and the gold. The green is the leaf of the shamrock, and the gold is the flower. That's Fenian Brotherhood. The Irish Republican Brotherhood is the Easter lily. The green is the stem, the white is the petal, and the orange is the stamen. That's Irish. They're the sister organisations. And one was founded by John O'Mahony for America. They opened the White House for St. Patrick's Day. They lobbied to build a factory in Shannon in every little town in Ireland. And that's where the Celtic Tiger came out of. You know, and all, but they keep on airbrushing all these things.
Yes.
Wait, there was any TD or anything, and they all got that, and people did. Nobody bothers. If you don't bother, should you have it at all? Should you be third class? If you haven't your sovereignty, you're a third class citizen.
They're hiding.
They don't want to answer the questions.
So in 1924 there was the mutiny in the army. That was the end of the IRB, was it?
No, the IRB never disbanded. When the president, he said, when Harry was reading that, the president of the Irish Republican Brotherhood is also president of the Sovereign Republic of Éire. And when Harry Boland went to America, he went as president. De Valera was never president of the Sovereign Republic of Éire. He was president of Dáil Éireann, which is slightly different. And that's why the title is never changed, because the 32 county election, that's what they aimed at, that's what they got. And when Collins was, it was Harry Boland, then Moylett, and then Collins. And when Collins was shot, we came back again to Vaughan's Hotel to my granduncle. So we have held it ever since. So we are presidents of the Sovereign Republic of Éire and kept it to that. That's why. Mary McAleese is president of 26 counties. She can't claim sovereignty. In actually, she's supposed to have the Trinity, but she can't. And she has 10 strings on the coat of arms in her car.
And it's encircled.
And it's the president of the Free State is what she has. And we're not a free state, we're a sovereign republic. Free states are only 26
That's
counties.
what De Valera did before he sent Collins over to negotiate the treaty. And the Collins wittingly, knowingly.
He did. But the point about De Valera, from with the first president, Douglas Hyde, when you watch all those presidentially, they all have to sit on the seats with their backs to the sovereignty. The biggest insult you can do to any country is to turn your back on the sovereignty. And De Valera was going to be the first president that wasn't going to do that. And he did. He turned his back and was subject to the Crown of England. And that, and until they
When did he do that?
When he became president in 19... When did he become president?
Dáil Éireann?
No, president in the park up in the Isles. Not Dáil Éireann. He was president of Dáil Éireann. But you see, that's a different... The Dáil Éireann doesn't... Dáil Éireann is the sovereignty, but it's the president of the Sovereign Republic of Éire, and that seal, I'm the only one who has the right to use that seal to indict for treason. And it's mandatory under that sovereign seal. And they just ignore it. Because they don't... The minute they admit they're not properly appointed or
they have to rely on the fact that the people generally don't know.
And that's why they airbrushed everything else. And I must say, and that's what they did. So it's based on fraud and
Tyranny.
Yeah?
Tyranny as well.
Oh yeah. Horrible.
Did you see that guard, one of the main guards, accusing...
and he's right.
He is right, yeah.
And up in the criminal courts, they only have a half-up. They've no Trinity, they've no license to hold a court. You have to have a license to hold a court. And there's one court that has a license.
Since 1922.
Since 1922. Isn't that a scandal?
Everything they've done since then is unlawful.
Colluding with the Crown of England, their interests only. And the courts, are they getting it from the Crown of England in 1922, which goes back to Henry VIII, and his, the law courts and the bench, or are they getting it from Dáil Éireann? They have to answer that question. And the more people that ask them, they won't be so high and mighty when they discover that, because you're automatically be indicted for treason. In fact, I'd stamp any of those.
I'll be in the jury anyway. And did
we all will.
No, it's scandalous. When you think of we could have a great country. And it must be run for the citizens of it. Not for bloody chancellors and bankers and all these people.
So did Brian Cowan reply to your letter? No.
46 years I'm doing it. I never get a reply from anybody. I write all these things. We'll ignore him. We can't, because the first question they're asked, imagine he doesn't know the difference between the sovereign seal and the heart. And when Bertie took off, Articles 2 and 3, he didn't understand what he was doing. And the people in the north went for it, But what they haven't realised, because I was invited to Stormont on the 27th of May, got on very well there. And they didn't realise that we're now back to the sovereignty of the 32 counties. Because Bertie didn't know when they took him. So it's been, sometimes there is a lot there.